Hey everybody, Justin with Lucky8 Off-Road, and welcome back to Project L405. We're chipping away at it, got the oil change done, got the control arms done, moving on to the brakes. All the brakes are at minimum to pass inspection, and we wanted to put something better. So we're gonna upgrade this vehicle with some TerraFirma cross-drilled and grooved rotors along with their ceramic pads. So, cue the intro, and we'll start right here at this tire. All right, there's a couple of ways to go about this, but I'm gonna do it the way I normally do it for this video. If you guys have a faster, better, easier way, throw it in the comments. That'll not only help me, but some of your fellow Rover enthusiasts. If you're only doing the pads, pretty easy job. You got to pop these pins out, disconnect this retaining bolt, take out the brake hardware. Don't worry, I'm going to bring the camera and we're going to do it all together. Then you slide the pads in and out and bolt it back together. For this job, we're going to change the rotor along with the pads. So that means we're going to have to remove this massive caliper. And this thing's, I'm sure, going to give me a headache. The little bolt that holds on the rotor. It's not necessary, but it is nice to have when you're putting it all together. So if you have to drill yours out, try to get the stud out, but if you can't, don't panic. All right, enough yammering. We're gonna bring it in and I'm gonna show you how to pound these pins out, take this hardware apart, and get the pads out. Here are the two pins. I just want you to pay attention to how far they're sticking out because we're gonna wanna duplicate that. This one's a little bit less than that one, but it gives you a general idea. Then we're going to take the hammer here, get it moving. I'm using a round-headed chisel. And that is, well, it was free. Gonna have to get a smaller chisel, but you get the idea. Let's move into hyperspeed and I'll pop these out. With the pins free, I put a little tension on this and wiggle the top one out. Just fold it back. If you do not have spares of these, which I highly recommend you get the hardware kit, but if you don't, you're going to want to save these parts because you're going to need to reuse them. Next up, we're going to pull this center piece out. It's held on with a 13 mil. You're going to have to trust me that there's a 13 here because it's going to be difficult to get the camera back, but once it's all apart, I'll show you. But pretty simple. We're going to undo this. Whoa, you hold still. Going to undo it, and then we're going to pound this section right out, similar to the upper and lower pins. Next up is to remove the wear sensor. This one is on here and it means it. There's a little rubber grommet piece up top that you pop off like that. You can see it. And then this should be almost free and come out. But the fact that it didn't trip the light and these pads are shot, yeah, that thing's welded to it. Yeah, that's garbage. No way that was coming out. Good news is we've got another one to replace it. Next is we're going to wiggle these brake pads out by prying on them like so. I'm going to give you guys a little sneaky trick. What I like to do is push back and crush the calipers down, making it super easy to put the new pads in. Kind of like that, but these calipers are so stiff. I'm going to get a breaker bar. We'll hyperspeed that. You can see me do it, but essentially we're pushing the pads against the calipers, the pistons on the inside so it doesn't damage them, making it super easy for the install. All right, sorry for the jump in the video. As you can see, when I was trying to push the pad against the calipers, struggling a little bit, this inner pad has lived its best life. It was seized in here. I couldn't get it to move. So sorry, I'm sure you guys would have loved to watch me struggle, but we cut that out. Now we're gonna pull the pads out like we're supposed to. That's how they should come out. If you're just doing the pads, skip ahead, but you're gonna put them back in and then throw all the hardware back in. For us, there's two big 21mm bolts on the back side of this caliper. We're gonna break those free and we're going to hang the caliper, not by the hose. This is a big one. We're gonna wanna use some sort of support. With the bolts out gently, it does have a rubber hose. We're gonna wanna bring this out and hook it up. Come on, little hanger. All right, that's safe out of the way. Now we can work on this rotor. Next thing to do is to get that Torx out. Give me a second and I'll let you know what size it is and we'll struggle together with it. I can tell already how that brake pad came out, that this is not gonna move. The Torx you want is a T47. Be sure to use that size or else you're gonna strip it. And as you can see, I've got this awesome makeshift rotor holder. Nope, not gonna go. I'm gonna have to heat that up, so we'll bounce back once I get that loose. Next up, we're gonna wanna get the rotor off. A little tip here is to clean the surface area that the rotor is going to mate to. You notice we had to pound it off. It's because the rotor rusted to the hub. I like to get a wire brush, clean off the hub, and then we're gonna put some never sees on it to stop that from happening. With everything prepped and ready to go, it's time to throw the rotor back on, and boy, oh boy, these are heavy. All right, we want to align the bolt hole to the bolt hole location. We're gonna put the Torx back in it, and then essentially everything in reverse. Bring the caliper down, bolt that on, put the pads in. I'm gonna just run the whole thing in hyperspeed in case I forgot something or it gives you a little bit of a benefit, but there's no reason for me to go step by step. So I'll finish here and then we'll move to the back and do the back brakes. Wait a second, I forgot. I want to talk to you about the hardware kit. This, if I can get it out, is that center pin that goes through here and gets tightened down with the 13 mil. So we're going to install all that, but first we're going to get the brake pads in, then we're going to do the hardware, and I'll show you how I put this in. And then we're going to pound these pins through, which is not fun. First off, we're going to start with that center pin, and there is the 13 that goes on the other side, holds it all together. Align it. By the way, this has got a little notch in it. You can only put it in sitting like that, so the notch will fit. If you don't, this pin won't sit all the way. Tap that through. Other thing is you want to make sure it's aligned perfectly here. If the pad's too far out, it won't seat, and if the pad's too far in, you're just going to struggle later on with those upper pins. Get it aligned, and you give it a little tap. Careful on the aluminum housing, only hit the pin. and then tighten that 13 down. Next up is to put in the pins. Remember, they're being pushed in that way with the pin tip sticking out. This is my least favorite part because you got to get way in there from behind and push them through. First, we're going to do the top, align all the brakes. You're like, oh, that's easy, but it's not. Remember, we need to have that pin coming out. Let's align the bottom. Okay, through that pad, through that pad. All right. Here is the brake pad retainer spring. The T portion goes underneath like so. So with that one in place pretty good, we're going to fold that through. And hopefully I can do this without blocking the camera. We're going to align it with some pressure on it. Come on now, work with me. And we'll tap them through. So that's essentially my little trick. Get that one in almost all of the way. Have the center pin done. Put the spring in place. Hold it back and align everything. With it all aligned, we're going to move the back and hammer them through. This is the chisel that I use. It's got a flat tip. And then I just push the pins through to where they were. So there's some sticking out. You don't want to go crazy and break the pin, but you definitely want it to seat and get pushed through. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll take a close look at how they look finished. There you have it. That is my least favorite part of the job, but the pins have been pushed through. This is tightened down. The spring is in place. The front brakes are almost done. Next thing we're going to do is replace this sensor. It's actually quite easy. You just clip it into place and reconnect all the little rubber dongles. The ABS sensor, brake pad wear sensor weaves its way from behind this little plastic cowl piece, which is held in with one of those quick pins. Sits like so and weaves its way around. You can follow it backwards, and this is what the little clip looks like on the inside. You just want to pop it free, replace that, snap it back in place, reweave everything in place. Make sure, especially this wheel speed sensor, you break that and life's going to be bad. Plug everything into the brake pad. Okay, now we're officially done. So a quick recap. New hardware, in my opinion, is a must. Get that for the brake setup. The ABS sensor, again, a must. They're always going to break when you take them apart. And put some never sees on the rotor where it meets the hub. Job done, going to the back. All right, back here, things are going to get a little bit trickier. It's just a standard caliper, super easy, a few bolts, no problem, except this has an electronic parking brake motor. So when you throw the switch for the e-brake, it sends a signal and the e-brake grabs onto the caliper and forces it in. As you're driving and the pads wear, the caliper constantly resets. So if you try to pry open the piston like you're normally doing, it's going to jam against that electronic motor. Force too much, you break the motor. There's many ways to go about it. You can kind of twist them in. You can get voltage and run the motor one way or another. I'm only going to show this demo with the gap tool. If you don't have a gap tool by now and you got a modern Land Rover, it's like going to your car without a key. You definitely want this tool. And in the tool is the caliper function. I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like when the caliper has been released, and then we'll go in and put it on the brake and use the e-brake, reset everything. There's a lot, but you'll get it in a minute. We'll come back here. I'm going to show you this, and then I'll show you the gap tool. We're on the passenger side. I already did that side, and I had to replace the caliper, so it's a nice clean slate to show off everything. Right here is the electronic motor. It's plugged in out of this harness. If you're going to try to do the 12-volt jumper, you'd have to remove that harness. and the motor essentially is pushing in on the piston, holding that spot and keeping pressure on the pads. We're going to use the gap tool. We're going to run the motor out into service mode, and then we should be able to get some play on this one, and more importantly on the other one over there that we're working on. With the e-brake released, we're going to get in here and we're just going to we're going to wiggle. There you go. I think you can see it there. We've managed to collapse the piston all the way using the brake pad against it so we don't damage any of the rubber boots. Next up, we're going to take these 13 mils off, get the caliper out of the way. I'll get a caliper hanger and we'll move to the next step after that. 13 mil here, I broke it free, and you're gonna see this nut wanting to turn. I've got a special wrench, but if you don't have it, just get a pair of needle nose in there so that you can take the bolt, or the bolt out. I'm gonna save that. And then we're gonna do the same thing up top here. Break this free. Oh my. I better start eating my Wheaties. Caliper is free. Let's see how much play we have. Careful taking it out because you're going to want to slide it past that electronic part. All right, that's supported. Now we're going to move on to these, and I'll let you know what size the inner hanger bolts are. The inner hanger bolts are a 12.15. Those are easier than the caliper bolts. All right, I'm not going to bore you with this. We'll get this off, get that whole bracket out of the way, get the pads out. We're going to also clean and lube the guides here so we can get the new pads on, and we'll move over to the rotor, which is going to be a pain with that bolt, but we'll address that in a minute. Okay, back over here, it's a T47. I'm going to make sure, yep, T47. And if it's anything like the other four, it's not going to want to come out. So I'm going to have to use my little friend here, Mr. Torch. Just warm it up a little bit. I'm going to get it out. So when we come back, I'm going to have this out, the rotor off. I'm going to polish the hub to get all the rust off like we did in the front, put some lube on it, and put the new rotor on with the bolt, and then we'll start putting everything else back together. Wish us luck. Okay, everything back together. Quick recap what I like to do. First thing we did back here was put the caliper into access mode. Then we pushed in the piston to free it up. Took off the caliper housing. We hung it so it didn't hang on the hose. Took apart the caliper bracket. Then we got off the rotor by struggling with this little bolt. Next up, with it all together, I'm gonna get inside. I'm gonna pump up the brakes, get all the fluid pushing in all the calipers because we played with every one of them. Then I'm gonna have my foot on the brake and activate the e-brake a couple times, get everything to reseat, and the job should be done. I'm gonna bring the camera down on that new caliper so you guys can actually see the caliper moving, and then the electronic parking brake work. All right, here we go. Push the brake a couple times. All right, I'm gonna turn the vehicle on. And we're going to push the brake and pull the e-brake. Doing it again. And again. That should do it for the e-brake. I'm going to release it. There you have it. It's kind of a pay attention job, especially when you consider this is how you stop a very heavy vehicle. But this should be a good walkthrough for everybody. I'm leaving the vehicle up. If you're paying attention to Project L405, we're finally gonna do something off-road and cool to it. We're gonna do a lift kit and wheels and tires in the next video. If you're just here for the brakes, hope it helped. And on that, guys, I'll see you on the next one.